Alright, so this is the final proof. This is proof 5 of 5. Okay, so here we go. Alright, so let's start this. So what we know is our givens. I'm going to write our givens. If you guys do not know what the upside down T is, this is perpendicular. Okay, that means perpendicular. Okay, so here we go. LN is perpendicular to MP. LN is perpendicular to MP. This is given. It forms a T. ML is congruent to MN. This is also given. Okay, the next step. What we know is we have two perpendicular segments or perpendicular lines in this case. Okay, when you find something that is perpendicular, the first thing you want to point out are right angles that are congruent. Okay, so in this case we have angle MPL and MPN are right angles. Okay, and this is by the definition of perpendicular lines. Okay, now I see some of you guys also getting confused. There's nowhere anywhere in this is a bisector. There's nowhere midpoints or any of that. I don't want to see anything in the reasons that say bisector or midpoint. Okay, so MPL and MPN are right angles. Okay, so we know that these are right angles. Okay, so now we know that right angles are congruent to each other. So the next step that we can say is angle MPL is congruent to MPN. And we know that because all right angles are congruent. Okay, all right angles are congruent. These angles are congruent to each other. Okay, so here we identified a pair of angles that are congruent, so we can write angle. I also missed this earlier. ML is congruent to MN. This segment is congruent to this segment. We identified a pair of sides that are congruent. Okay, the next step here, the side that is shared between both triangles is this one in the middle. This is the reflexive property. Segment MP is congruent to segment PM. So this is the reflexive property. Okay, so here we identified a pair of sides that are congruent. Okay, I know what you might be thinking. Now, our goal is to prove that segment LP is congruent to NP. So what we need to do is prove that the triangles are congruent. But if you look at it, this spells ass or SSA. So because it spells that, you might think, well, are they congruent to each other? Well, let's look at it. The only exception to the SSA rule is a right triangle. So here we have two right triangles. I'm going to draw them separately for you. Okay, so this is one of them, and this is the other one. If you get two right triangles, these have to be congruent by actually its hypotenuse leg, because you have a right triangle. That's the only exception to the SSA rule. Okay, so actually what you would have to do in this case, this is the one very few times you would have to do this. So what you'd have to do is you want to try to identify the hypotenuses. The hypotenuses are ML and MN. This turns into a H. Okay, angles, well, the right angle. So if you have the right angle, you don't have to worry about this anymore. Okay, and then MP is congruent to PM. Here's my legs that are congruent to each other. Okay, so this is going to be legs. So think about this. If you had to apply the Pythagorean theorem, right? If you know, like, the hypotenuse of this is 10, and you know that both of the legs here are 6, you know that definitely, you know that this side here and this side here are going to be congruent, because 10 squared minus 6 squared, 100 minus 36, 64. Square root of 64 is 8. So that means these would have to be congruent to each other. This is the only exception to the AS rule. Okay? So here, what I can say is triangle MPL is congruent to triangle MPN. And this is going to be by HL, the only exception to the SSA rule. Okay? Finally, this here. So LP is congruent to NP. So we're trying to identify, we wanted to prove that these parts are congruent to each other. So this by default, segment LP is congruent to segment NP, and this is going to be by CP, CT, C. Okay. I don't think I mentioned this earlier, but I could have totally put angle L is congruent to angle N, and then it could have been angle L is congruent to angle N, CP, 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 CT, C. That also works as well. Okay. Other than that, that's pretty much it. Okay. I hope these 5 videos will help you prepare for the mastery quiz. Good luck.